I will just go straight to Helen, if I may, and ask this question. Helen Fields, former criminal barrister, thanks for joining me. It's going to be a bit of a fast-paced interview, I'm afraid, as I'm sure you can imagine. I take it, and I hope that you saw the sentencing as it happened just now.
Yeah, I did, yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about sentencing guidelines. Now, we're getting lots of texts in actually saying that Judge Goose has actually undertaken the task of sentencing and conducted himself, in the opinion of the people that are contacting Talk in the last 5 or 10 minutes, impeccably. He did what he needed to do, he did what he could do, and pretty much, it seems, laid down the maximum. Now, I'd like to know from you if you think that actually is true, or could he have gone further? But then we need to get onto the question of sentencing guidelines and the fact that technically Axel Rudakubana could be out in 51 years' time, which some people certainly have a big issue with, particularly our caller just then. So, yes, that first question, I guess, really. What's your view?
Yeah, well, Russell, I think the judge, Mr. Justice Goose, did a really good job, actually. I think the sentence of 52 years, the starting point of 52 years, less time served, was exactly right. I understand that your callers and all of us find it really frustrating that it's not a whole life term. I understand that completely, but at some point we have to delineate between, you know, the age of an offender. Now, it came down from 21, now it's 18, and, you know, one wonders how aware Rudakubana was of that, having committed this offence a matter of days before he would not have been afforded that protection under the law. But I thought the judge did a really good job. All of the sentences were exactly what I was expecting. It could even have been a little bit lower. I'm very pleased that he stuck to the highest end of this.
But was it the highest? I mean, but Helen, was it the highest, the most serious sentence that he could have laid down?
It's within his discretion, but to be quite honest with you, somebody serving 51 years plus is about the most that I would realistically expect to see. He made some comments. He talked about horrific extreme violence. He talked about this man's intention to murder as physically as he could. He talked about the, you know, extremely high seriousness. So it's quite clear that the judge was coming at it from exactly the right standpoint and felt that he was doing all he possibly could. And I just reiterate, that's the minimum he's going to serve. And then there's going to be a parole board who will not have forgotten. They will have access to the papers. They will have access to people who are still alive then, who were affected, who will be able to go and give their views. They will know every detail of this case. It will be in the papers, and Rudakubana is not going anywhere until somebody, that board, is convinced that he is no longer a threat, no longer a danger. They will also expect him to express things like remorse.
Which he hasn't done in any shape or form yet, far from it. He stuck two fingers up at the court and the process and the families today by playing up not once but twice. Allegations from journalists that were in the court that the reason he's sat hiding behind a so-called surgical mask was because he was smirking. We heard that actually on Talk on the Jeremy Kyle show a couple of days ago. So, I mean, yes, the question of remorse is certainly not one that is in question. He is absolutely showing none whatsoever.
No, not at all. And I think the judge could see that. I mean, it was clear from some of the evidence that was given by the prosecution about Rudakubana's behaviour as soon as he was arrested, and the things he said that frankly don't bear repeating again, about the deaths of those little girls. And it's quite clear that there was no remorse shown at the time of arrest, no remorse shown 6 months later. He's been as disruptive as he possibly could today. Nobody feels the slightest bit of sympathy for the man. I don't care what he said about how he was feeling. And it's going to be very hard for him to show, even over 50 years, that he really has, you know, done any work on that and that his view has changed. So although this is very upsetting not to see a whole life order because of the law, you know, I'd like to assure people that it's going to be extremely difficult for him ever to see the outside of a prison again.
Well, it will, Helen, and that is somewhat reassuring. But I think, you know, because of the severity of the offences and because of his behaviour, I'm afraid that, and you will know this of all people, the premise of justice being done and justice being seen to be done, yes, 51 years, of course, is a long, long time. But many people, and I suspect this will be on the front pages of most newspapers tomorrow, and it's certainly a theme that is recurring in front of me here by way of what callers are saying and text messages, is that if you are 17, regardless of whether you're 8 days away from your 18th birthday or not, if you are able and willing enough as a 17-year-old, a nearly adult in the eyes of the law, to commit such atrocities, you should be dealt with as an adult on the basis that you have committed those atrocities, because the effect, the outcome of your intentions and your crime is the same regardless. So my question to you is, do you think that the sentencing guidelines now need to be modernised, tweaked, adapted, changed because of this instance, because of this case?
Yes, and I have to say, it's not just this case. We're seeing increasing amounts of young people, quite young teenagers, sort of 12 to 14, engaging in really serious violence, repeated stabbings, repeated knife crime. And the information they have access to and the internet, you know, these are all causes that really give us pause to take another look, in fact, and just, you know, consider whether or not there should be a flat age, or whether or not, in relation to everyone under the age of 18 who offends, the first thing that happens is that the court directs there to be an assessment of, you know, their psychology, their psychiatry, to see how much they really understood about what they were doing.
And Judge Goose did refer to that, didn't he, in terms of, yes, there was evidence of autism, and I think he referred to, he didn't use the words, but it came across as an element of ADHD, but actually that did not affect his capacity, it did not affect his mental age, and therefore Judge Goose said, as a consequence of that, there was no mitigation. The same as he's really, and people should be heartened to hear this, that we have a judge that decided to not be swayed almost one iota by so-called mitigation in terms of, for instance, his very, very late guilty plea. I mean, I guess he could have reduced the sentence as a consequence of that guilty plea, but he was having none of it, Helen.
No, I mean, he said the judges have to go through they have to jump a few hurdles. So they have to say, if there's been a guilty plea at some point, they have to say they've taken it into account. The result of that would have been absolutely minimal. It will not have made any practical difference at all. Really, what the judge was emphasising over and over again is that the things he was taking into account was all the things that made this more serious, not any of the mitigation.
Helen Fields, thank you very much indeed for your expert analysis and explanation. Helen Fields, former criminal barrister.